talk with you today about another very important transit that is going on right now. In February of this year, 2019, Chiron moved into the sign of Aries, and it will be in that sign until May of 2027. So across the next 8 years, we're going to experience the energy of Chiron in Aries. What does this mean for us? I truly believe that Chiron in Aries is calling us all into a time to heal our sense of self, and to heal some of the traits and characteristics of Aries that we carry individually and that we carry collectively. What does this mean? Let's start with Chiron. Chiron is a comet, some people call it a minor planet, that orbits between Saturn and Uranus in the sky. It wasn't discovered until 1977. And Chiron, being in that mid-range between Saturn and Uranus, is bridging the energies of those planets. From a deeper spiritual perspective, Saturn is the planet that really holds the energy of our consensual consciousness, how we identify with the culture and the characteristics of the time that we live in. Uranus carries the energy of individuated consciousness. How is it that we set ourselves free from our history, from our culture, from family expectations, from peer pressure, to be true to who we are? Chiron is really that planet, or comet, that is symbolic of where we carry core wounds. Wounds that block us from being able to move from that consensual reality into our own truth, to set ourselves free to be who we uniquely are. Where Chiron is in your chart, both by sign and its house placement, is telling you where you carry some of those core wounds that may block you or make it hard for you to step into the fullness of who you are. Chiron is the wounded healer. It represents karmic wounds that we may carry into this lifetime from past lives. But whatever those wounds that may have come from past life trauma, they get reenacted in some way early in this lifetime to help bring those wounds, those issues into our consciousness so that we can heal. Chiron symbolizes those core wounds, but as we work them through and move into healing and move into wholeness, Chiron in our charts also represents our healing gifts. The Chiron orbit is approximately 50 years. So the age of around 50 is a very important time for you when Chiron comes back to the place where it was when you were born. And if you haven't really worked those core wounds in a conscious way, then usually about that time in your life, all of that's going to get activated in order to bring it to your awareness so that you can truly heal from those early emotional wounds or karmic wounds. So 50 is often a time where either you're having to really address those unresolved issues, but it's also a time when your healing gifts get activated and strengthened as you are called to claim the gifts that Chiron brings to you. It really is significant that as we work our own wounds, we gain in wisdom, in compassion, in deeper understanding of ourselves and more sensitivity and empathy for others. We are able to be healers as we work our own wounds and allow ourselves to bring into awareness those issues in our lives that have caused us our deepest pain. So as we are in this transit now with Chiron moving into Aries, look at where that falls in your chart. That is going to show you what area of life you may be called into a deeper level of healing in your sense of self. But Chiron in Aries, for all of us, is saying it's time to heal your sense of self. It's time to clear those blocks that have kept you from being in the fullness of who you are or the truth of who you are. The energy of Aries, the sign that Chiron is in right now, has its gifts and its shadow side. Aries at its best is our capacity to take initiative, to start a new project, to take a risk, to step into our leadership skills and abilities. It is a fire sign. It's our capacity to listen to our own inner fire and act from that place. So at its best, Aries gives us courage, that capacity to step out in our own unique way and be creative or be a pioneer or move in new directions with that inner confidence and strength in our sense of self. The shadow side of Aries, if it's out of balance, can be an overemphasis on ego, on that experience of who I am as separate from others. So it can lead to impatience with others or a lack of sensitivity to the needs and concerns of others. And at its extreme end, Aries, that fire sign ruled by Mars, changes from a capacity to take initiative and to act into acting in destructive or violent or aggressive ways. So it can manifest in that full spectrum. So as we are in this time of Chiron transiting that sign of Aries, it's calling each of us to look at how do we deal with that Aries energies, those Aries energies in our own life. Because we all, even if we don't have planets in that sign, it lands somewhere in our charts, and we all have that energy as part of who we are. So as we're moving into the first months of this transit, take time to reflect on how you experience your sense of self. Are you blocked in terms of having difficulty asserting yourself, or standing in your own truth, or taking risks, or feeling like it's safe to step into who you are in ways that are different from the people around you? Or are you struggling with difficulties at the other end of the spectrum? A tendency to be impatient or aggressive or insensitive to the feelings and needs of others. Allow Chiron to bring healing energy to you in this time. Because the difference between Chiron in our birth charts, where it's symbolic of those core wounds that we carry, I truly believe when Chiron is transiting and moving its energy into our charts and into our collective, it's about healing. It's bringing that energy of healing to that archetypal energy of the sign that it's in, and to that place where it lands in our charts. This transit also has meaning for us at a collective level. how do we understand how Chiron is healing that energy in our world right now? We know, and I've talked about this in other videos, that we are in an incredible time of transition and transformation right now as we move into the beginning of the age of Aquarius, as we're at the ending of one 26,000-year precessional cycle and moving into a new one. It's a time of radical transformation of our consciousness, individually and collectively. So how does this transit with Chiron and Aries impact us now as we're in this transition time? Well, let's reflect on what the Aries energy is in our collective consciousness. The age of Aries was from about 2000 BCE to 0 AD, that 2,000-year period of time. What was going on in our history at that time that gives us an understanding of how Aries manifests in our collective consciousness? That period was the time of the rise of great empires in Egypt, in Greece, in Rome. It was the time when the Indo-Aryans invaded India, and Indras became a primary deity in India, the war god. In Greek civilization, there was Zeus. In Rome, Jupiter. For the ancient Hebrews, Yahweh. We moved from a time in the age of Taurus, which was the previous age, from about 4000 to 2000 BCE, a time when the earth was honored, the primary deities that were worshipped were the great goddess in different forms. It was a time when there was really an honoring of the energy of the sacred feminine, which is an honoring of how the energy of spirit is embodied in all that is. As we moved into the age of Aries, we moved into this time of empires, of war, of invasions, of conquest. It was a time when war and violence became idealized. It was a time of great leaders. It was the time when we moved from honoring the great goddess to shifting to honoring the one prominent male god, monotheism. This was the time we moved into the time of patriarchy. And now we see that hierarchical dynamic of, again, the elevation of conquest, control, domination, and the devaluing of the sacred feminine, the devaluing of our relationship with the earth, a devaluation of women, and a devaluation of that sense of the sacred as we experience it in an embodied way. It became a sense of our connection with spirit as transcendent, not immanent, not right here with us. And it was also a time when we shifted from being more right brain dominant to being more left brain dominant. So it was a time when we moved into more linear thinking, more of that analytical mind, and it was also a time when we moved into an increasing sense of separation, the separation of self from other, the analyzing of things as they are separate from us, so self and object. It was a time when we experienced a greater degree of separation from our connection with the divine. Aries is associated with the ram, and it was throughout cultures around the world that we see these images and the mythology around the ram, and we see increasing an increasing emphasis on the importance of sacrificing to appease the gods. It is this sense of we are now separate from the divine. We are caught in sin, that our mortality is somehow a constraint and binds us in the energy of separation and of sin. So we need to make sacrifices to come back into relationship, right relationship with the divine. So we see how in the age of Aries, we really are struggling with what it means to be separate, with what it means to be a self, with what it means to really find that way to be who we uniquely are without it leading to rupture. Rupture in our relationships with each other, with the divine, and then leading into this increasing sense of imbalance and need to conquer or control the other, to gain dominance, to somehow feel safe and secure. So I truly believe, as we're in this time of Chiron in Aries, it's not only helping us heal our sense of self individually, it's helping us collectively to heal those imbalances that we still carry from the age of Aries. The destructiveness of patriarchy, the destructiveness of violence, of the devaluation of women, of our separation and exploitation of the earth. It's time for us to not see war as a way to buy our own security and dominance, but as a rupture in our being in right relationship with each other as a global community. It's important to look at the ways we have idealized separation and individuation in our psychology, in our culture, in our mythology, in a way that blocks us from true compassion and connection with and for each other. It's important to look at the ways that we've idealized left brain ways of thinking and being at the expense of right brain ways of thinking and being, which allow us to connect more with that emotional and intuitive and relational part of ourselves. It's important to look at how we've so emphasized that understanding of spirituality as transcendent that we've lost our connection and understanding of how the sacred is in everything around us, in all of life. It's time with Chiron in Aries to heal those wounds in our sense of ourselves and in our separation and way of being wounded in relationship with each other. If we allow Chiron to bring that healing energy, we can remember that the energy of Aries is balanced by the sign opposite it in the zodiac, Libra. Libra, that is ruled by Venus, that is about relationship, that is about living in harmony and in balance. We then take that energy of Mars and balance it with the energy of Venus. We take that energy of separation and individuation and we balance it with remembering how to be in right relationship with each other and all that is. This is what it means to integrate the energy of the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. It doesn't mean to flip from patriarchy to matriarchy. It means to hold in balance that we need that individual sense of self and capacity for self-assertion and initiative and leadership, but we need to balance it with that capacity to be attentive to the needs of others, to see how we can be in connection and in relationship with each other in a way that allows harmony and the acceptance of our diversity and our uniqueness while in community. This is what is going to help us move into the age of Aquarius, where we can move into a sense of community with equality, with acceptance of diversity, with mutual respect. Think of our capacity to co-create a new world if we can allow these wounds in our collective psyche and our individual psyches to truly heal, so that we in fact move into our wholeness and fullness in new ways. I'm currently working on a book co-authored by Christina Lee on healing from trauma in a holistic way. I hope to put out more information about this book soon. But I think it's really tied in with how this is a profound time for all of us to heal these wounds of the past, step into our wholeness, set ourselves free, and co-create a new world. Blessed be.